With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: resilient indoor environments in a changing climate, a vital conversation on indoor air quality in St. Kitts and Nevis. Multiple sentences delivered at High Court in Bastille for robbery and larceny offenses. St. Kitts and Nevis National Assembly unanimously backs Taiwan's international participation. No, a Partnership for National Unity APNU and Alliance for Change AFC coalition in Guyana for upcoming elections. St. Lucia faces U.S. tariff pressure, impact on CMOS and agriculture. Internationally, U.S. to abandon Ukraine peace push if no progress soon, Rubio says. Now, the details. On April 16, 2025, the In Focus program hosted an enlightening discussion titled Resilient Indoor Environments in a Changing Climate, featuring Dexter Fassel, chair of the newly established Indoor Air Quality IAQ Task Force, and Dr. Jazel Rowland, a member of the same body. The conversation offered valuable insights into the importance of indoor air quality, particularly in light of evolving environmental challenges.
Indoor air quality basically speaks to the quality of the quality of the indoor environment where we live. As you're quite aware, it's a phenomenon that really disrupts, I would say, societies, and it's something that requires urgent attention.
Fassel underscored in opening remarks, setting a tone that highlighted the seriousness of this often overlooked issue. The task force, a broad and multidisciplinary assembly, was inaugurated on February 6, 2025. Fassel described it as a groundbreaking convening that brought together stakeholders from diverse sectors, including government ministries, academia, industry practitioners, and non-governmental organizations. Notable members include representatives from the Cabinet, Secretariat, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, the Ministry of Sustainable Development, as well as the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and local professional associations.
We also have representation from the Trades and Labor Union, the St. Kitts Nevis Institute of Architects, of which I represent this entity. I'm currently the sitting president of the SKNIA, the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber and Industry and Commerce, St. Kitts Nevis Building Contractors Association. We also have present academia in the form of, from the Brand Fitzroy College. Note as well that the representative is also a practicing architect, so he basically provides assistance and support in that regard. We do have a professional cleaning company. Also representation from an HVAC company, considering again the issue at hand.
Let me just stop you. The HVAC, that would be heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Pardon for not clarifying earlier. And we do also have an NGO in the form of Lake Health and Wellness. Again, issues of indoor air quality directly resonates with wellness.
Emphasizing the comprehensive composition tailored to tackle indoor air quality issues robustly. Dr. Rowland brought a vital medical perspective to the dialogue, highlighting her role in symptom assessment related to indoor air pollutants and her participation in a subcommittee focusing on public engagement.
We intend to launch a nationwide awareness campaign to educate the public on indoor air quality, also develop educational materials for schools and workplaces as well, and to partner with the non-governmental organizations to reach diverse communities.
Her involvement highlights the importance of integrating scientific expertise with community outreach to promote a comprehensive understanding and effective action. The task force chair traced the origins of the task force to a pivotal national dialogue on indoor air quality held in October 2024.
So the dialogue basically created this, it was this point of departure, and it basically set the tone.
The event brought together industry leaders to analyze the current situation in St. Kitts and Nevis and share their lived experiences. Their collective reflection motivated the establishment of a structured, ongoing body dedicated to policy formation and effective responses to indoor air quality challenges. The discussion turned toward practical realities, including the significant amount of time people spend indoors.
Well, yeah, it definitely is. We spend a considerable amount of time indoors, whether we like it or not. Where we recreate sometimes, it's indoors. We work. We spend 8 hours of work, and for most of us, unless we work in the field, we spend a considerable amount of time indoors.
The chair remarked, drawing attention to the stark reality that the majority of daily life unfolds within indoor spaces, making air quality in these environments critical to public health. Addressing common misconceptions, the task force chair noted an unexpected source of indoor pollutants.
Air fresheners, disinfectants, even perfumes, things that we associate with pleasing aromas, something that is nice and fresh. They're also air pollutants.
Definitely, Ian. These fall into the category of what we consider to be VOCs, and this stands for volatile organic compounds.
He elaborated further on their presence in paints, pigments, building materials, and household appliances, warning of their potential health detriments when concentrated. Architecture and design emerged as a crucial element in managing indoor air quality.
We as architects, we are trained to look at the building holistically. And to provide the best possible outcome for the end user. So definitely it does come into bear. Adequate ventilation is 101. Proper orientation to facilitate the movement of air, throughout the spaces. So in effect, the whole idea is to have the space cleanse itself. By removing the stale air and of course replacing that with fresh ambient air.
Dr. Rowland, while not directly involved in architectural design, emphasized the health impacts she observes, especially in patients with asthma aggravated by environmental factors like dust from construction activities. From a medical standpoint, the discussion highlighted the practical realities associated with the use of disinfectants in healthcare settings. Dr. Rowland recounted,
We use Clorox.
Okay.
That's to my knowledge. I've never picked up a whiff of ammonia since I've been there, and that's about 2 years now.
dispelling worries about older, more hazardous substances still in use.
Responsible to basically set the tone for the tone and structure for what will be eventually this policy, draft policy document.
Key aims include recommending indoor air quality monitoring standards and enforcement mechanisms, promoting public health education, advocating for sustainable design practices that leverage local vegetation and landscape, and establishing complaint and response protocols. A key priority is creating
A structure that is free of bias. It is very open and transparent.
regarding complaint handling. Additionally, the task force recognizes the need for incentives to encourage public engagement and awareness, acknowledging the human element of motivation. Highlighting the extensive implications of air pollutants, Dr. Rowland warned of their health impacts.
Humans, we could develop lung diseases. Persons with asthma or allergies can have worsened attacks, headaches, dizziness. In terms of animals, they can have lung issues pretty similar to us.
She further noted the environmental concern of bioaccumulation, where toxins concentrate through food chains, threatening the reproduction and survival of species, underscoring the interconnectedness of human health and the broader ecosystem. Regarding plant life essential for oxygen production, Dr. Rowland explained that pollutants
Lowers the plant's defense mechanisms against pests or plant diseases.
posing risks to agriculture and food security. Practical advice for residents was also shared during the program. Dr. Rowland recommended regular cleaning, maintaining air conditioning systems diligently, addressing any moisture or musty odors promptly, and
If there is fresh air, provided there is no burning or smoke in the environment, open your windows, let the fresh air come in, remove the stale, get rid of the stale air.
this guidance reinforces simple steps individuals can take to support healthier indoor environments. The role of plants in improving air quality was touched upon, although Dr. Rowland admitted a lack of specific knowledge about which plants are most effective. The chair of the Indoor Air Quality Task Force introduced the concept of biophilic design, which
This is basically the incorporation of design and the outdoors into indoor environments, again for a more holistic and a more balanced sort of well-being. So one of the things persons could take into consideration as well is the fact that we live in the tropics. We are surrounded by nature. If we are to design a house, as much as possible, we should try not just have plants on the inside, but as much as possible allow the indoor to interact with the outdoors, right? Consider small atriums, it goes a long way.
This design philosophy, especially relevant in the tropical context of St. Kitts and Nevis, aims to foster holistic and balanced well-being by connecting inhabitants with nature. Facel also emphasized the importance of vigilance in building maintenance, particularly in preventing moisture intrusion.
Sometimes they can be very evasive, and it takes a bit of investigating, careful investigation to basically identify those sources of moisture penetration, whether it be in the roofs, whether it be in the walls, and we don't necessarily see much intrusion in the floors, but it happens as well. It does happen as well, and this moisture might be trapped at the tile level, and eventually we begin to see the marks through capillary action, basically moving upwards into the walls. So my advice would be to basically take a look, be very mindful of these hairline, we call them hairline cracks in the mortar, because eventually moisture would find itself.
The conversation on In Focus made clear that indoor air quality, often overlooked amidst outdoor environmental concerns, commands urgent attention in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially as climate change continues to reshape living conditions. The new National Indoor Air Quality Policy Task Force stands as a beacon of hope and rational action seeking to develop comprehensive policies, engage the public, and foster healthier indoor environments for all residents. The quality of the space is just as important as the space itself, as we are reminded that the air we breathe indoors has a profound impact on our health. On April 15, 2025, the High Court in Basseterre handed down significant sentences to 3 individuals convicted of robbery and larceny offenses, highlighting the ongoing commitment of the judicial system to uphold the rule of law and ensure justice within the Twin Island Federation. His Lordship Justice Ian Morley presided over the proceedings and delivered the sentencing after all defendants pleaded guilty on March 3, 2025. Joselo Nunez Pie, a resident of Infirmary Road, St. Johnson's Village, and Jonathan Rollins of Herbert Street, Newtown, both on St. Kitts, were sentenced for a robbery offense committed at Fort Tyson Rise, Frigate Bay on November 11, 2023. The 2 men had earlier admitted guilt to the charges laid against them. Joselo was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment with time already served on remand credited toward his sentence. Importantly, he will be eligible for remission after serving 2/3 of his term, contingent on good behavior. Rollins received a slightly longer sentence of 6 years and 6 months. Notably, at the time the offense was committed, Rollins was already serving an 18-month suspended sentence. As the commission of the robbery nullified the suspension, those 18 months were added to his current sentence, bringing the total to 8 years imprisonment. Rollins will have his time on remand accounted for and will be eligible for remission after completing 2/3 of his sentence with good conduct. In a separate matter, Sylvester Gangsta People Boone of Upper Market Street, Basseterre, faced sentencing for a building breaking and larceny offense that occurred on January 19, 2024 at Fort Thomas Road, Basseterre. Pleading guilty earlier this year, Boone was sentenced to 22 months imprisonment, with time spent on remand credited toward his sentence. He is also eligible for remission, subject to good behavior. Justice Morley underscored the importance of deterrence in such property offenses, reinforcing the message that criminal activities targeting physical properties would face a stringent judicial response. Vince Roy Chumney of Keys Village, St. Kitts, was sentenced for multiple offenses, including 3 counts of housebreaking and larceny, and 1 count of larceny from a dwelling house. The offenses were committed on several dates, specifically November 29th, December 19th, and 20th, 2023, for the house breakings, and on December 21st, 2023, for the larceny from a dwelling. Chumney pleaded guilty to these charges on March 3, 2025, and received a sentence during the recent hearings. For each housebreaking and larceny charge, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, while the larceny from a dwelling charge attracted a 4-year term. All sentences are ordered to run concurrently, allowing Chumney to serve the total duration aligned with the longest individual sentence, 4 years. As with the others, time spent in remand has been taken into account in his overall term. The sentencing reiterates the judiciary's resolve to address serial property offenses with firm penalties, protecting residents and their possessions. These recent sentencing decisions serve as a testament to the High Court's firm stance on criminal activity, especially those that threaten the safety and security of citizens. With His Lordship Justice Ian Morley presiding, The rulings exemplify the ongoing efforts of the judicial and law enforcement agencies to deter crime and maintain law and order in St. Kitts and Nevis. In a decisive move underscoring the strengthening diplomatic bond between the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis and the Republic of China Taiwan, the National Assembly unanimously endorsed a resolution supporting Taiwan's bid for broader international involvement. During the sitting on Thursday, April 17th, Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew formally presented the resolution of the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis to endorse the bid of the Republic of China Taiwan to participate internationally in various organizations which garnered full parliamentary support. Prime Minister Dr. Drew, speaking to the Assembly, conveyed the resolution's full scope.
Your leave, I rise to read in this Honorable House a resolution, and it says, Madam Speaker, resolution of the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis to endorse the bid of the Republic of China Taiwan to participate internationally in various organizations. Whereas the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis, being a member of the Interparliamentary Platform Formosa Club in the Caribbean, treasures the diplomatic ties between the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis and the Republic of China Taiwan, and recognizes that the profound friendship between our two countries has grown stronger over the years based on shared values, the respect for the rule of law, democracy, and human rights.
The resolution situates Taiwan not only as a valued diplomatic partner, but also highlights its substantial global contributions.
And whereas the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis values Taiwan as a major contributor in international public health, while its healthcare system has earned a global reputation and has been our dedicated partner in public health, as well as in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic.
The statement reflects long-standing cooperation during the pandemic, wherein Taiwan's medical aid and health expertise significantly augmented the Federation's public health responses. Further, the National Assembly's endorsement acknowledges Taiwan's pioneering role in environmental sustainability and climate action.
And whereas the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis recognizes Taiwan's efforts and contributions to renewable energy and to the objective of net zero emissions by 2050, as well as Taiwan's willingness to share mitigation and adaptation projects to climate change and to enhance early warning systems for disaster prevention.
This backs Taiwan's leading-edge projects and policies aimed at combating climate change, a global issue with profound implications for small island nations like St. Kitts and Nevis. The resolution also applauds Taiwan's strategic support in the fight against international crime.
And whereas the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis treasures Taiwan's contributions to combating transnational crime and calls for Taiwan's appropriate inclusion and meaningful participation in meetings, mechanisms, and activities related to the fight against transnational crime and terrorism, so as to create a seamless security network and together uphold global justice.
Dr. Drew's statement reflects awareness of Taiwan's strong law enforcement system and the critical need for its integration into global security frameworks to enhance international justice and safety. Lastly, recognition is given to Taiwan's critical role in international civil aviation.
And whereas the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis acknowledges Taiwan's importance in the development and governance of international civil aviation and the indispensability of its inclusion in cooperation mechanisms in order to safeguard global aviation safety and reconnect the world in the post-pandemic recovery.
The statement underscores Taiwan's acknowledged position as a pivotal hub in global air traffic management and the necessity of its engagement for safe and efficient aviation worldwide. In summary, Prime Minister Dr. Drew's resolution concludes with a firm commitment.
Be it resolved, therefore, that the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis continues to endorse Taiwan's bids to participate in a professional, pragmatic, and constructive manner in international and regional mechanisms and organizations such as the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, the Criminal Police International Organization, and the International Civil Aviation Organization.
The resolution signals St. Kitts and Nevis's unwavering support for Taiwan's meaningful involvement in key global institutions, emphasizing shared democratic values and a mutual vision for cooperation across health, environment, security, and aviation sectors. The unanimous parliamentary backing reflects the deepening diplomatic relationship and positions St. Kitts and Nevis as a vocal advocate for Taiwan on the international stage. In regional news, a Partnership for National Unity APNU and Alliance for Change AFC coalition in Guyana for upcoming elections, Guyana News Source reports.
The APNU, a Partnership for National Unity, and the AFC Alliance for Change are likely to go their separate ways into the upcoming elections, as coalition talks between the two have completely collapsed, with no agreement in place. The talks have been ongoing for several months. At a press conference, chairman of the AFC, David Patterson, said the AFC will go it alone in the upcoming elections.
Regrettably, we have, despite the best efforts of our negotiation team, been able to arrive at a mutually beneficial arrangement with APNU. We've communicated our decision, regrettably so, to APNU, and we've also communicated to them that we will proceed with our campaign as Alliance for Change, since time is of the essence.
The Alliance for Change was pushing for its presidential candidate and leader Nigel Hughes to be the presidential candidate for the coalition, in addition to it being awarded 40% of all government positions to the APNU's 60% should they take the seat of government. Additionally, the AFC was also pushing for a head of the list to come from outside of the two. In response to those demands, the APNU, through the People's National Congress reform, made it clear that with it providing the largest base in any coalition, the presidential candidate should come from its side. The APNU also said it should be given 70% of government positions, while the AFC would receive 30%. While it would be open to having the leader of the list coming from outside the two parties and would even consider giving the AFC the Attorney General's position. Both sides maintained their positions, leading to a collapse of the talks and the AFC's decision to move ahead with its solo campaign. Mr. Patterson said while the AFC will head into the polls on its own, the door remains open for additional talks before nomination day.
Of course, as always, the door is always open prior to nomination day. Should there be a change in this position or change in circumstances. But as it stands, we have communicated this position to APNU before, and I do think that it was received.
On claims that the Alliance for Change was demanding too much in the negotiations with the APNU, Patterson said he does not believe that to be true. 10 years ago, the APNU and the AFC tied the electoral knot as they headed into the 2015 elections as partners. The coalition won those elections, but 3 years into their time in office, the partnership was hit with accusations of distrust after an AFC member in the National Assembly sided with the then opposition PPP and successfully got a no-confidence motion passed against his own government. The two sides still rekindled their relationship in time for the 2020 elections. The coalition lost those elections, and it was then that the AFC opted to move away from the partnership. While still holding on to the seats it was awarded as part of the partnership in the National Assembly. Mr. Patterson said although the two will be heading into the upcoming elections separately, they will still be able to work together on a number of issues of mutual interest.
St. Lucia faces U.S. tariff pressure, impact on CMOS and agriculture. DBS St. Lucia has that story.
St. Lucia faces a baseline tariff of 10%, excluding higher tariffs on specific products like shoes, bags, and clothes. The island's main export is CMOS. Other exports include agricultural goods like dasheen, rum, and condiments. Dr. Thomas Samuel, trade advisor to the Ministry of Commerce, expressed concern that rising tariffs could reduce demand for St. Lucia's exports, as retail prices in the U.S. will most likely increase.
The actual retail price would depend on a number of factors. Sometimes the business persons might find it might not be a good idea to pass on all because it might affect their competitiveness. So that might cause them to sort of reduce the pass-through of the price to the consumer, which may get all or may not get all, depending on local circumstances. But we know the price of the good itself to the importer has gone up. As to whether he passes all or part of it to the consumer is an internal decision.
Tariffs on imported goods could raise production costs, making the US-made products more expensive. This could prove costly, as a large number of the island's imports come from US markets. Rikisha Baptist, Director of International Trade, says that exploring new markets is something local businesses would have to do.
Of course, the onus would be on those involved in business, the traders, to source goods from alternative markets. One of the disadvantages of that, perhaps in the short term, is, of course, contractual arrangements would have already been made with their key suppliers, etc. So you can appreciate that there may very well be a cost associated with that. The other thing is St. Lucia has some trading arrangements with other countries. So, for instance, the Dominican Republic, for instance, Costa Rica, Colombia. So we need to, unfortunately, none with Mexico, notwithstanding the proximity. So I suppose in the short term, one has to consider those markets with which we have preferential trading arrangements and see whether these are viable options.
The advisors note that the fluidity of the situation will impact policies put forth to mitigate any economic backlash to St. Lucia and the wider region. Whilst immediate interventions may be considered the best, they say policy intervention must come from an informed perspective to be effective.
We can be fair and expect some increases in prices in time. Now, these things are not always immediate, because you need to run down inventory, run down your stocks, and then when you reorder, you face the new prices. So the prices are not going to all be immediate, like in some cases, like next week. But what I'm saying to you is that the world as we know it is changed for every country. And this is not a St. Lucia issue. This is a global situation.
The officials pointed to an April 9th regional consultation, which brought together private sector representatives, government officials, and members of the CARICOM Secretariat. The meeting focused on crafting a collective strategy to address the challenges posed by shifting U.S. trade dynamics. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoute reporting.
We now bring you these international reports.
US President Donald Trump will walk away from trying to broker peace in Ukraine within days, unless there are signs of progress, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Friday. His comments followed US talks with Ukrainian leaders in Paris, the first to be substantive, high-level, in-person, and to include European powers.
But we're not going to continue with this endeavor for weeks and months on end. So we need to determine very quickly now, and I'm talking about in a matter of days, whether or not this is doable over the next few weeks. If it is, we're in. If it's not, then we have other priorities to focus on as well.
This was despite apparent progress in Paris on Thursday, where Rubio said a US peace framework he presented received an encouraging reception. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office called the talks constructive and positive.
We have a minerals deal, which I guess is going
Trump said on Thursday he expected to sign a minerals deal with Kyiv next week, after an attempt in February fell apart following Zelensky's Oval Office clash with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. So it was unclear why Rubio's tone shifted so dramatically overnight. But 3 European diplomatic sources told Reuters it reflected growing frustration in the White House over Russian intransigence to end the war. Meanwhile, the war, which began when Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, showed no sign of abating, with this deadly Russian drone strike early on Friday hitting a bakery in northern Ukraine, where traditional Easter cakes were being prepared, Ukrainian officials said. There was no immediate comment from Paris, London, Berlin or Kyiv on Rubio's statement. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said some progress on a peace settlement had been made, but contacts with Washington were difficult. Moscow remained open to dialogue, he said. Trump promised during his election campaign to end the war in Ukraine within his first 24 hours in the White House. He moderated that claim on taking office, suggesting a deal by April or May, as obstacles mounted. He has pressured both sides to come to the negotiating table, threatening tougher sanctions on Russia or an end to billions of dollars in US military support for Kyiv.
Let's head to the Middle East, because the far-right Israeli Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said it is time to open the gates of hell on Hamas and push ahead with a full military occupation after the armed group rejected Israel's latest ceasefire offer. Hamas's chief negotiator said they would not agree to partial deals, saying They would exchange all of the remaining hostages for Palestinian prisoners and an end to the war. Well, hospitals in Gaza say at least 23 people were killed overnight and dozens more injured in Israeli strikes across the territory. There's been no immediate response from the Israeli military. Well, let's head to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Gary O'Donoghue. And Gary, worth putting today's developments in context, isn't it? Because there was a ceasefire hostage agreed by both sides, which Israel broke by not implementing phase 2 and phase 3. So Israel's proposals today are in place of that original deal, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a month. In fact, it's a month to the day since Israel resumed airstrikes on Gaza, March the 18th. And really a couple of weeks before that, we were meant to have entered into phase 2 of the negotiations. Now, Israel at that time proposed an extension along with the US. Hamas rejected it, and then Israel resumed its bombing, having stopped any aid getting into Gaza from the beginning of March. So really since then, since over the last month, the situation has been daily, nightly airstrikes by Israel. Local health officials, Hamas health officials on the ground say more than 1,600 people have died in that period of time. And the UN says that, well, practically 500,000 people have been displaced, partly by having to move from their houses being destroyed, but also by these what Israel calls evacuation orders, what the UN calls displacement orders by Israel, asking them to move towards the coast, particularly in the south. Now, in the last few days, we've also seen some strikes in those areas where the civilians have been moving to, particularly these tented camps near Khan Yunis just in from the coast. And certainly the Children's Agency, the UN Children's Agency, says some of the images we've seen from children dying in some of those strikes, appearing to die in those strikes, should shock us all to the core. So several dozen casualties per night. Israel saying it's targeting terrorists, naming some of those it's targeted, particularly one individual earlier this week who Israel says was Hamas' main arms smuggler in terms of getting their munitions into the strip. But even though Israel, Matthew, is occupying around 30% of Gaza now on the ground, there isn't actually much on the ground fighting. Hamas, either through a lack of capacity or through some sort of strategic decision, are not really engaging very much with the Israelis on the ground. All these deaths are happening through airstrikes. Now, Israel says it takes every kind of mitigation it can in terms of precision munitions, intelligence, air surveillance, all that kind of thing. But still, the UN agencies are saying that this is now probably the worst humanitarian failure of this generation, and in the meantime, there's no aid at all getting into the strip.
Gary, we'll have more on that particular thought in a moment or two. A quick, brief final thought, because a couple of months ago there was a real push from the US administration. Now, of course, they're dealing with Ukraine. We've been covering that on the programme. There's trade issues, there's Iran, there's deportations. Does it feel where you are that the focus still is very much on that situation there?
I don't think people feel that there's as much focus here as there was. I mean, if you think of the simple fact that Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy to the Middle East, is also the envoy for Ukraine. He's also the envoy for the Iran talks. Iran talks this weekend in Rome. We've had the Paris talks on Ukraine this week. It feels a little bit like the US, the attention of the US has moved away from this in the intractability and the fact that there's nothing on the table that either side are going to come together on in particular. And how this war ends is, frankly, anyone's guess, because no one knows what will come afterwards. Israel insists on the complete destruction and disarmament of Hamas. Hamas is still holding on to those hostages. It's really its only bargaining chip in that sense. And there are 59 of those, 24 who are said to be alive. So we're in a standoff at the moment. In the meantime, a lot of civilians are suffering.
Nearly 4 months since the fall of the Assad regime, Syria has appointed a new transitional government. Despite a fragile security across the country, Syrians are experiencing political freedoms they've been deprived of for 5 decades. But some fear the new Islamist-led government may be putting social and religious freedoms at risk. From Damascus, Lena Sinjab reports.
And action!
Behind the scene of a series in the making, Syrian soap operas gained fame across the Arab world. They provide a reflection of society and its changing dynamics. After the fall of Assad, Syrians enjoyed political freedom, but fear for the social ones.
I received all the support and facilitation from the people in charge of the media in the new government. But that doesn't mean anything in the long run. I am not optimistic at all about the coming period regarding what we are seeing or experiencing.
Damascus University reflects the mixed background of Syria's society. Now, a new mosque is being built on campus without notice and without building permissions. Students don't think this is a priority.
We are not just Muslims in Syria. It is a diverse society with different sects. The priority for us is to learn music, theatre, how to film. It is more important than building a mosque. We already have prayer rooms for people to perform religious duties.
On the streets, there are a lot of warning signs. These preachers drive through Christian neighborhoods advocating for Islam through loudspeakers. Locals are not happy. The man arguing in this video tells the preacher, "I am a Muslim and I don't want to hear your words." Syria is known for its tolerant form of Islam, where the Sufi practice is more common. But even these Sufi worshippers are not safe. They were attacked and called infidels by hardline Salafists. I asked an imam if he worries a more radical Islam will take over.
It is impossible. Our society will not accept it. We have lived in harmony with different sects for years, even during difficult times. The Quran says it clearly. No compulsion in religion.
Syrians have been through a lot over the past decades. While the majority live in poverty, they do enjoy religious and social freedoms. Now some feel that these two are in the grip of a new, repressive Islamic order. Lina Sinjab, BBC News, Damascus.
Well, Lina spoke to me a little bit more about her time in Syria and what life is like now there under the new regime.
Well, it's incredible, something that unheard of that people are experiencing. It's not only people who've been liberated from prison, you feel that the whole country has been liberated. So wherever you go, people are debating, talking, discussing, old and young, lots of events. So people feel that this is the first time in 5 decades they belong to the country, they have a say in the country, and they're not looking over their shoulder if somebody is listening to them, or if they're going to be in trouble if they say their minds, speak their minds, basically.
But there are concerns about their future freedoms, aren't there?
Yeah, certainly, because it's still not clear how the government is operating. They say one thing, and the way they form the government, they put the constitutional declaration. It shows that there is only one man deciding who is President al-Shara. There's no real inclusion of all spectrum of the society. Only one woman minister represented. But also on a social level, although there hasn't been any written rules of imposing Islamic rule, but there are lots of practices that are sending the signals that, there is an Islamic influence, especially Salafi one, that could jeopardize the social freedoms that Syrians have always enjoyed. It's basically the whole way the society is inflicted, because Syria is mainly a secular city. There are more than 17 different sects and groups that are living really freely together and in coexistence. And even the Sunni Muslims, they don't have a conservative or radical way of living. So women, even though if they are wearing the hijab, they are out in the public, they're in the souks, they are in the cafes, they are in their workplace. And now you feel that there are a new trend is coming in that being enforced not necessarily by the government per se, but those affiliated to the government.
AI-generated videos showing US President Donald Trump, Tesla founder Elon Musk, and Vice President J.D. Vance in a factory, and others showing Americans working on production lines. They are just some of the content going viral on Chinese social media in the wake of Beijing's intensifying trade war with Washington. Internet users are protesting exorbitant tariffs and making fun of the idea that the US can replace China as a manufacturing superpower.
On one hand, yes, there's maybe people who are saying, they feel targeted, but on the other side, there's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing of like, yeah, you guys go ahead and cut us off because there's no way you guys are going to make this stuff without us.
Posts supporting Beijing's defiance of the Trump administration have been shared millions of times. One reads, "We must not back down. We must stand firm and support our nation's decisions." Chinese officials are fanning nationalistic sentiment. On X, a foreign ministry spokesperson posted a speech by Communist Party founder Mao Zedong in 1953 during the height of the Korean War, saying, "We will never yield." The Chinese government is hoping to channel nationalism into action by encouraging Chinese consumers to buy more goods made in China and support manufacturers who previously relied on the US market. Chinese retailers and e-commerce giants have launched campaigns to help exporters sell goods to domestic shoppers instead.
When the Chinese government mobilizes all kinds of resources, when the entire country, entire society is behind it, I think the impact on China's economy is something bearable.
Some have found other ways to offset the impact of high US tariffs.
Quicker.
Using platforms such as TikTok to teach Americans how to buy direct from Chinese wholesalers and save money by bypassing big brands.
Do you want to buy laundering capsules? One port only costs 5 cents.
Posts calling for a boycott of US products in China have also gained traction, but analysts say Beijing is unlikely to support such moves. The government is determined to portray the country as a stable destination for foreign investment, a market open to all countries, including the United States. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were resilient indoor environments in a changing climate, a vital conversation on indoor air quality in St. Kitts and Nevis. Multiple sentences delivered at High Court in Bastille for robbery and larceny offenses. St. Kitts and Nevis National Assembly unanimously backs Taiwan's international participation. No, a Partnership for National Unity APNU and Alliance for Change AFC coalition in Guyana for upcoming elections. St. Lucia faces U.S. tariff pressure, impact on CMOS and agriculture. Internationally, U.S. to abandon Ukraine, a peace push, if no progress soon, Rubio says. Thank you for listening.